The courtroom was a cavern of cold marble and hushed tension, where every whisper echoed like a secret too dangerous to be spoken aloud. Judge Harold P. Whitmore, a man whose powdered wig seemed to grow more rigid with each passing year, sat high above the proceedings with the air of a man who had long since decided that justice was best served with a side of condescension. It was a routine case, minor vandalism, a graffiti tag on a public restroom wall, something that should have taken no more than 10 minutes. But when the defendant, a lanky teenager in a wrinkled hoodie and jeans, shuffled into the dock, something about his demeanor made the judge's already short temper flare. The boy couldn't have been more than 17, with tousled brown hair and eyes that sparkled with a strange, unsettling intelligence. "You again?" Judge Whitmore sneered, peering down over his spectacles. "Another juvenile delinquent wasting my time. Name?" The boy cleared his throat. "Elias Finch." "And you're representing yourself?" the judge asked, his voice dripping with mockery. "How quaint. Let's see how well you defend your, artistic expression." The gallery chuckled, but Elias didn't flinch. He simply nodded, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Yes, Your Honor. I'll be handling this matter myself." Something in the calm precision of his voice sent a ripple through the room, like the first tremor before an earthquake. Judge Whitmore, accustomed to nervous stammers and clumsy excuses, launched into his usual routine of belittlement. "So, Mr. Finch," he drawled, "you think spray painting a pig with a top hat on city property is protected speech? Did you get that from TikTok or a constitutional law textbook?" The courtroom erupted in laughter, but Elias merely smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that made the judge pause. "Actually, Your Honor," Elias began, his voice steady and clear, "the image in question was not vandalism at all. It was a commissioned mural for a local youth art initiative, documented in a city permit filed under Section 7.3b of the Municipal Beautification Act. The permit number is M44821. Signed by Councilwoman Lorna Reyes on June 12th. A hush fell over the room. The judge blinked. "Permit? There's no record of such a permit." Elias reached into his backpack, yes, a backpack, and pulled out a neatly organized file. "Here's the original application, the signed approval, and photographic evidence of the mural's completion 2 weeks ago. Additionally, I have sworn affidavits from 3 community members who witnessed the work being done during daylight hours with official supervision." He handed the documents to the bailiff, who passed them to the bench with a look of growing disbelief. Judge Whitmore flipped through the pages, his face reddening. This can't be right," he muttered. "It wasn't in the police report." Elias tilted his head. "That's because the arresting officer, Officer Darnell, failed to verify the facts before making the arrest. In fact, he ignored a direct call from the program coordinator warning him of the misunderstanding. I have the call log and time-stamped voicemail." The gallery gasped. Even the prosecutor leaned forward, intrigued. The judge, now visibly flustered, snapped, "This is highly irregular. A teenager shouldn't have access to this kind of legal documentation." Elias didn't blink. "Your Honor, I believe the law applies equally to all, regardless of age. Or are we now adding age-based discrimination to the charges?" The courtroom had transformed. What began as a joke had become a spectacle of legal precision. Elias, still in his hoodie, stood with the poise of a seasoned litigator. He cited case law with ease, Tinker v. Des Moines, Papish v. Board of Curators, and referenced municipal ordinances with a fluency that made the public defender look like a first-year law student. Furthermore, Elias continued, the city's failure to update its internal databases reflects systemic negligence. If officers are expected to enforce the law, they must also be trained to recognize its exceptions. This isn't just about one mural. It's about due process, transparency, and the presumption of innocence. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man named Carl Dunn, shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, perhaps we should review the evidence before proceeding." Judge Whitmore, his face now the color of overcooked lobster, slammed his gavel. "I'll take a 10-minute recess," he barked, retreating to his chambers in a flurry of robes. In the hallway, he demanded to know who this kid really was. A quick background check revealed nothing. No prior arrests, no legal filings. But something didn't add up. When the court reconvened, Elias dropped his final bombshell. "Your Honor," he said, removing his glasses and folding them neatly, "I'd like to formally request the dismissal of all charges, not just on procedural grounds, but because I am not, in fact, a juvenile defendant." The room froze. "I am Elias Finch, Esquire, a licensed attorney in the state of New York and a senior legal analyst with the Civil Rights Defense Initiative. I've been working undercover for the past 6 months, documenting patterns of judicial bias, unlawful arrests, and systemic neglect in juvenile proceedings across 3 counties. This case was part of a larger investigation into discriminatory enforcement of minor ordinances." He produced his bar card, his ID, and a letter of accreditation, signed by the State Bar Association. The judge stared, speechless. The prosecutor dropped his pen. Even the bailiff looked stunned. The fallout was immediate and seismic. News vans swarmed the courthouse. Reporters scrambled for sound bites as Elias, now dressed in a tailored Navy suit, having changed in the restroom, spoke with calm authority. To the press. "This wasn't about humiliating anyone," he said, adjusting his tie. "It was about accountability. Too often young people, especially those from marginalized communities, are treated as criminals before they're given a chance to speak. They're mocked, dismissed, and railroaded through a system that assumes guilt. I wore a hoodie not to deceive, but to experience what they experience. And what I found was unacceptable." Social media exploded. Hoodie lawyer trended worldwide. Legal scholars praised his bold tactic as a modern-day Brown versus Board moment for procedural justice. Meanwhile, Judge Whitmore faced an ethics investigation. His past rulings were scrutinized, revealing a disturbing pattern of harsh sentences for minors and dismissive remarks in court transcripts. The graffiti case was dismissed with prejudice, and the city was forced to settle a civil rights complaint on behalf of dozens of wrongfully cited youths. Officer Darnell was reprimanded, and mandatory bias training was implemented across the department. But the most profound impact was symbolic. Elias became a symbol of a new kind of justice, one that challenged authority not with rage, but with reason. Not with violence, but with the very tools the system claimed to uphold. Teenagers across the country began organizing Know Your Rights workshops. Law schools reported a surge in applications from underrepresented students. And in courtrooms, from Boston to Boise, judges suddenly found themselves thinking twice before sneering at a defendant who looked too young to know the law. In the weeks that followed, Elias Finch didn't vanish into obscurity. He gave TED Talks, testified before Congress, and launched a nonprofit called Equal Bench to mentor young people interested in law and activism. But perhaps the most powerful moment came months later, when he returned to the same courtroom, not as a defendant, not even as a lawyer, but as a guest lecturer for a judicial ethics seminar. Judge Whitmore was in attendance, now on sabbatical pending review. As Elias stood at the podium, he looked directly at the older man. "You mocked me," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You assumed I was ignorant, lazy, unworthy of your respect. But that assumption wasn't just about me. It's about thousands of kids who walk into courtrooms every day believing the system is already against them. Justice isn't just about laws. It's about dignity. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, for who they are, not who you assume they must be." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, Judge Whitmore rose to his feet and clapped. One by one, the other judges joined in. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. And in that moment, something shifted. The story of the teenager who outsmarted the system wasn't just a viral sensation, it became a turning point, because sometimes justice doesn't come from the bench. Sometimes it walks in wearing a hoodie, carrying a backpack full of truth, ready to remind the world that the law belongs to everyone, not just those who think they own it. And as for Elias, he still keeps that hoodie framed on his office wall beneath a simple plaque that reads, "Never underestimate the power of a quiet mind in an unassuming package." Because in the end, the greatest victories aren't won with shouting or rage, but with preparation, principle, and the courage to stand up, even when the whole world expects you to sit down and stay silent.